Introduction to sociology. So when you think sociology, you have to think society. Like anthropology, when we hear anthropology, we have to think culture. And when you think psychology, you have to think human mind, human brain, essentially. It's an easy way to remember it. Sociology essentially is the study of individuals and how they act or behave within an institution, within a given society. So they believe that humans develop values and beliefs while interacting with social systems. And many sociologists call these things institutions. So education system, that would be an institution. Religion would be an institution. The Olympics would be an institution. It's just another word for social systems that surrounds them. So sociologists will dictate how we live, how freedom is defined, who we love, and that'll be an interesting topic that was an interesting topic if you took the HHS course, as you talk about theories of attraction and why people are attracted to the people that they are. What style we want, all this is lifestyle we want, all this is dependent upon the historic and current structure of society. So I think you'll learn best through a series of examples that I'll talk about to highlight some of these key concepts, and then I'll post some classic or some sociological lectures or sociological studies that'll give you a better taste of what sociology is. And again, if you took the HSP course in grade 11, this is just review. So some key terms. The first blank is status. Status. And this is a term used to describe our position in an institution. So in a given society, certain professions or certain people are going to have a higher status than others. I guess stereotypically, in a given society, what professions would have the highest statuses, or stati? I think it's statuses. I'm thinking doctor, lawyer, professor, perhaps. Maybe police, maybe firefighters, to an extent. But we could go through a ranking of professions. And this ranking of statuses is what's called a hierarchy. And a hierarchy is, within a society, there is a ranking of power and authority. So it's almost like a social ladder. And the example that I give in class is, if you have a problem with me as a teacher, I guess first of all you would talk to me, then you would talk to my department head. If that wasn't enough, you would then go on to talk to my vice principal. If that wasn't enough, you'd go to my principal. We're gradually climbing the ladder then, and then superintendent, then director, maybe some trustees, then maybe your member of provincial parliament, then the deputy minister, deputy premier, okay? Now, I don't know what your access would be to these people, but that would be the social hierarchy of the education system. And some people would like to rank the social hierarchy of a given high school, and it might be returning seniors or fifth years, and then grade 11s and such, or it could be based on social group. Do the jocks or the skateboarders or whatever, do they rank higher according to the social ladder? I'm not sure. I think sometimes up until we're high school, age plays a major factor in determining where we land on the hierarchy of the social ladder. Now, everyone in life, and this is the next blank, is role. And everyone has a perceived status based on the assumption of society. So I think I have a given role, which I guess would be upper middle class based on teacher pay scale and perception of status. But all of us have multiple roles. So, for example, I would be a teacher, a coach, a son, a brother, a husband, a friend, a member of the town council's recreation committee, and you could talk about the multiple roles that you have. Now, what a role conflict is, and that's the next blank, is when life's roles conflict with each other. So it would be like if you were in a class and your mom was the teacher. What do you call her? Do you call her mom, or do you call her Mrs. Two-Bit? What do you call her? And she has to balance the role of being your mother and being your teacher. And do you face a role conflict if you go to the home computer and find the test that you're going to be writing in that class tomorrow? That makes it pretty awkward. I would give the example if I was your teacher and I needed to get a part-time job, so I got a part-time job at the local Tim Hortons, and a student of mine had to train me. Is that awkward because I'm older? Is it awkward because I'm in a position of authority in the normal classroom? What do you call me? Do you say, Mr. Nowak, you really messed up here, you need to cash out or check out? I think that would be awkward. I think some people see me as a teacher and teacher only, and sometimes don't see that I am a real person. And I teach in a small town, so some people are really shocked when, and as kids, we think the teachers just live at the school, and when you see them, it's like seeing a caged animal. So I remember in my earlier times going on dates and stuff, and students would stop by the restaurant and look in the window and stare at me as if this shouldn't happen, and stared at me as if I was like a caged elephant and was putting on tricks. So I found that a little difficult, and sometimes I just want to go to the grocery store, buy my food, and maybe I'm wearing a basketball jersey, a hat backwards, listening to some music that's probably not indicative of a professional, and some people have a problem with that. Some people are defined by their profession and have a hard time getting out that role. On the same sense, in a traditional classroom, I am the center of attention, and when I'm in a social setting, not that I do many social things anymore, but if I'm in a social group and I'm telling a story and someone's attention deviates away, I find that hard, because in the classroom people will listen to me, but then if a peer kind of deviates away, I have to remember that I don't have control here. It's not like I'm a teacher in this scenario. I think a more concrete example, I'll be talking about my friend Alan. And Alan did this correctional services program at St. Lawrence College in Kingston, which led him to a job at the Kingston Penitentiary. And he worked with some of Canada's most high-profile criminals. Some of the prisoners were in segregation because of their public profile. So his job, he had to be quite aggressive and sometimes physically aggressive. And he had to use his nightstick on multiple occasions. He had to deal with dead bodies on occasion. He had to actually shoot a gun once for a prisoner escaping. So all of this stress, all this uber masculinity and aggression, he had a hard time shutting it off when he was outside of his role as prison guard. So I remember he was on a week's vacation, and we were playing basketball together, and I had missed a shot, which is hard to believe, I know, but he got right up into my face and shoved me and started swearing at me of what am I doing? And it was just, there was nothing on the line, we were just playing for fun, and I could kind of see this aggression escalating. And because of this, and I'm sure there's other things, Alan did eventually get out of the prison guard career, and he actually lives in Taiwan, working with a corporation teaching English language. But yeah, sometimes our profession dictates our role. There's some famous studies, the David Suddenhouse study of death, followed around a mortician at a hospital, and no one wanted to deal with him because they just associated with him, he's the dead body guy, and no one wanted to hang out with him or be his friend. I don't know if we have the power now to kind of differentiate, I think that's the word, between the person, the individual, the human being, and the job that they have. So role conflict is when these two roles, your two roles, conflict with each other. So sometimes my role as a teacher conflicts with my role as playing basketball in a league. And what if I'm, playing someone's dad? I foul them hard or get aggressive. And these kind of roles conflict with each other. I don't think I get too aggressive. Anyways, the next blank is values. And this is the beliefs of a group that provides standards for members' behavior, so what we value as a society and how we act. And then a norm, or customary types of behavior, and specific rules that outline what is considered to be standard. Many sociologists will look at why we deviate away from the norm. So if you're taking criminology, you'll study social deviance, and we will look at a number of theories in Unit 2 and 3 of why people deviate from the norm, and some really interesting theories which help us explain or maybe give some empathy to why people deviate away from the norm or why they turn to crime. And that's actually one thing that, if you watch Criminal Minds, I think that show does a good job of showing the background of certain criminals and the impact that your childhood can have on your adult life. That's a more psychological thing, but we'll talk about that likely in the next lesson. So, like anthropologists, they can do field research and collect and analyze statistics. They can do surveys, they can do interviews, they can do a content analysis. And a content analysis would be, comparing two things and counting how many times something appears, how many times a religious allusion comes up in a TV show. How many, look at product placements. How many times do you see Coke versus Pepsi? How many times do you hear certain words? Has the media, or primetime television, become liberalized and we see more R-rated content, or we see more mature language being used? So count the number of times certain words are said in prime time now and compared to 20 years ago, and what was seen as inappropriate content 20 years ago, is that now being said now on TV, and what words still get bleeped out or censored, and what words are let go. Now there are three major contributors, or called the three fathers of sociology, and there we go. So there's not a lot of room to take notes, but I guess you guys will have the ability to press a space bar and to make notes there. So Karl Marx, he and a friend by the name of Friedrich Engels, he wrote the Communist Manifesto. And this is like the Bible of communism, if you will. And if you actually own the manifesto, which is really only a 100-page, pretty small book, in early 1900s in Canada, you were thrown in jail. People were very scared that the idea of communism was going to overthrow capitalism, and we'd lead to this equal state of socialism or communism. And when the Winnipeg General Strike, which I think was in 1919, happened, and all these people rallied together and went on strike. They were rallying against the power structure. They were rallying against the owners of production, the owners of business. They thought that's what was happening, that our society was getting overthrown. Our capitalistic economy was going out the window. Now, that didn't happen, and that was part of the Red Scare. The last part of the last words in Marx's book is that the workers of the world will unite and kind of overthrow this unequal power structure. Because Marx believed that there's two groups of people. Well, there's actually a couple more, but we'll talk about two groups. That there's the upper class, and they are the bourgeoisie, or the owners of production. So that would be like the 1% that the Occupy movement went, or the 1% of the world's wealth. I gave you a statistic on the Anthro lecture the other day. And the proletariats, or the workers of society. And he said essentially the proletariats work to make the bourgeoisie richer. And there are certain opportunities the bourgeoisie get that proletariats do not. And if you look at the rising cost of education, tuition, who can really afford to go away to school? It's the bourgeoisie. Well, the proletariats not have that chance anymore. So if you've read 1984, the proletariats are the proles that Orwell talks about. Karl Marx also talks about, let's talk about religion for a second. He said that religion is the opiate of the masses, and that people need turn to religion for a sense of escapism, to escape the oppressive nature of our capitalistic society. And he essentially said, eventually, the workers of the world will get so upset about being oppressed for so long that they're going to overthrow the power structure, and that we'll go to a state of socialism. I think that's pretty good for Marx. Emile Durkheim, again, this is a man. A lot of people will call him Emily Durkheim, but it's Emile Durkheim. He wrote a book called Suicide. And it was very difficult to read, not only because of the nature of the subject, but because of his writing style would be set up a point, and then he'd say, well, but that's all wrong because. It was a little frustrating. Anyways, he said that when someone commits suicide, it's the ultimate barometer or ultimate measuring stick of a society's sickness. So when someone commits suicide, we have to step back and look at society and think, what's not working? What failed that person? Was it the education system? Was it the religious? Was it the system of the family? What made that person do that? And because of that, he's known as the father of functionalism. What went wrong? What's the purpose of this? He also discussed the idea of organic and mechanical solidarity, but we will talk about that a little later. I think that's Unit 2. What else do I need to tell you about Durkheim? Durkheim believed in a theory or a term called anomie, which is the term A-N-O-M-I-E, anomie, which translated means a lack of regulation, or a lack of definition. So I think an example would be, what is happiness? What is normal? How do you define normal? How do you define happiness? So an outsider comes in, you say, act normal. Well, what does that mean? There's a lack of regulation, there's a lack of definition. What is happiness? Can humans really be happy, or do we continue to aspire to have more and more and more? And when can we truly be happy? That idea depresses me a little bit, but yeah, anomie is an interesting theory. Finally, Weber, and yes, it's spelled Weber, but it's actually pronounced Weber. These are some of my nerdy pet peeves. And Weber, again, we'll talk a little bit more about him later on, but his famous works were Politics as Vocation and Science as Vocation. And his use of the word vocation essentially means a calling to a higher being. So in this case, it was a calling to God. And he said that if everyone in life embraced their job as if they were not only doing their job, but doing their job to serve a higher purpose or to serve a higher being, that society would kind of fix itself, and everyone would take their job that much more seriously, and then everything would work. So it's the idea of vocation. He also wrote about the dangers of charismatic leadership, which we'll talk about shortly. He warned about someone with a lot of charisma is going to come along in society and lead our population to do bad things, but because the charisma of the leader, the magnetic personality of this leader, will draw people in. And so you saw it with Hitler, you see it with cult leaders or gang leaders. He also talked about rationalization and the iron cage of bureaucracy. And we'll cover rationalization in Unit 4. So those are the fathers of sociology. That's a brief taste of what sociology is all about. Sociology is where my heart lies. It was my major, one of my two majors in university. I took sociology of sport class. I took sociology of social inequality, sociology of gender, and those are some of the sociology of education. And so those are some of the classes that really sparked my interest in this social science. So I'm going to post some famous, or not some famous, well, one of the most famous social psychology experiments was the Stanford Prison Study. It combines sociology and psychology, however, it really talks about role conflict. And I'm going to embed a video underneath, and then another TED Talks lecture on sociology of gossip. And I think you'll really enjoy it. So you don't have to hand anything in again today. It gives me a chance to get caught up on some of your Dropbox activities and your quizzes. But the onus again is on you to get these notes complete and to put them in your notes and make sure you know it. So you don't have sort of the same sort of watchdog mechanisms to make sure your work is getting done. All right. Hopefully you'll have a break then from hearing my voice for a few days. And I hope this is working for you okay. Take care. Thank you very much.